Sebastian is a product designer and graphic designer living in Brooklyn. He is currently the design director of the Sneakers app at Nike and the creative director of the new Nike Digital Product Studio in New York. Professionally, he balances his work with an independent graphic design and illustration practice. Here to talk about designing with friction, Sebastian Speier.
Hey, it's great to be here. A lot of great speakers so far. I'm really honored to be here. And thank you to Dynamic for putting on this great event. So my name's Sebastian, and I am a creative director and design director at Nike in New York. I'm going to give you a little bit about myself first before just diving right in. I am Canadian. I grew up in Vancouver, and I was always really interested in architecture when I was young. And I pretty much, when it came time to go to school, I pretty much applied to every half-decent architecture school in Canada. Didn't get into any of them. And I kind of fell into my second choice of career, which was graphic design. So I ended up moving to Montreal. I did my undergraduate degree at Concordia University right here in Montreal. And the program I was in was kind of leaning towards, well, it's now called computation arts, but it leaned more towards like a digital skew rather than a visual design skew. I would eventually move to Toronto, and I was working in a lot of like digital advertising, digital media, digital marketing, a lot of web design. And then eventually I got scouted to move to New York and work at a company called Huge. And when I was working at Huge, I was an art director. I got to work on a number of platform-related projects. They tend to skew towards marketing, but I worked on Puff Daddy's new music video platform called Revolt.tv. I helped out on HBO Go on iPad and PS3. And I slowly started to realize when I was working at Huge that I was more interested in product side of things, making the product, rather than the marketing side of things, which is kind of like selling the products. So eventually, a bunch of people that I was working with at Huge ended up starting their own studio called This Also, and they asked me to be their first employee, and I was like kind of like one of the more senior creatives in the studio, working under the three partners. And while I was there, I was embedded at Google because they had Google as a retainer account, and the Creative Lab, they had both worked at the Creative Lab. And so while I was there, they embedded me at the Creative Lab for about 9 months, and I had the privilege of working on the new Google identity and kind of how the many mobile and digital products that it touches, I kind of helped integrate it into all these different properties that Google owns. And then just coming out of that into, this thing is hard to use. Coming out of that into last year, I got asked, because of all the product work I was doing, Nike asked me to join them in New York to help open the new digital studio in New York. So my current role is I'm on a team called Global Digital Design at Nike, which used to be called Nike Plus. They were responsible for like the field band and like a bunch of the other stuff, but it used to just be a handful of creative directors, and they would work with big agencies like AKQA and RGA. And now we've decided to kind of bring everything internal and really own the product strategy and the product vision of our 5 sort of big flagship products. So the big one is Nike.com, and then we have 4 apps. We have the Nike Plus app, we have the Sneakers app, and then we have our 2 sort of like training and activity apps, the Nike Run Club and the Nike Training Club. And we still work with a bunch of agencies for production purposes, but pretty much we have a department of around 40 designers, or 40 people within the digital design department, and we do all like the product strategy internally. I'm also now working on the Sneakers app, and part of my role is to take the Sneakers app from Portland and bring it to New York to be more in touch with sneaker culture, but also because Nike is having a very hard time recruiting product designers to Portland. There's a lot of talented product designers in New York, and a lot of them really don't want to move to Portland. So the point of the studio is to kind of like tap into the design culture that's in New York, but also tap into the sneaker culture that's in New York. And so the studio is called S23NYC, or Studio 23, colloquially. And Nike has like a strong legacy and affinity with the number 23, but we're called Studio 23 because we're actually on West 23rd Street in the Flatiron District. So while I'm the design director on the sneakers app and the creative director at Studio 23, I'm really just like a product designer at heart. And so I just wanted to start by talking about like what product design is at Nike. I know the audience here might be kind of a combination of like various types of designers, and I know that the term product designer is kind of like a buzz term right now, and it tends to get thrown around really loosely, so I just wanted to quickly define what it is to us. So coming from like a graphic design background, I really kind of had to like forget everything I knew about design. And the reason why I brought up the fact that I was always interested in architecture was because I now believe that architecture and anthropology and sociology are actually like much, much closer to what digital product design is than like a traditional graphic design career. When you're working on kind of like advertising or marketing, all your goals and all your endpoints are kind of like marketing materials, ads, and the goal is to kind of like drive people to buy a thing. Whereas when you're working on product, the goal is to remove the friction from kind of like everything that the user has to go through. You're trying to like build efficient tools, and you're trying to empower users with like really nice experiences. So you could kind of simplify that to, in advertising and marketing, you want to get people to buy the thing, and in product design, you're trying to get people to use the thing, and you're trying to get them to use it a lot, and you're trying to get them to engage with it on a regular basis, and you're trying to get them to enjoy using it. So product design is really about making experiences and interactions easy and empowering and delightful. So from that, we could also say that the role of the product designer is to reduce friction throughout the experience. The less work that a user has to do, the better the product generally is. So I just want to talk about friction because I'm using this word a lot, and it's actually the title of this presentation. So we're just going to look at a couple case studies, one from before I was at Nike and one while I was at Nike. And let's just talk about the ways that friction kind of normally presents itself and the ways that product designers are trained to kind of reduce that friction. So when I was at this also, we often focused on like their mobile projects because we specialize in mobile product design. And because most of the Creative Lab, shout out to Andrew Herzog, who also worked at the Creative Lab. He gave a really good talk earlier. Most of the people at the Creative Lab come from marketing and advertising backgrounds. So a lot of the projects that we worked on there were mobile focused. And before working on the new identity system, one of the really cool projects that I got to lead was the redesign of the Google search app for iOS. And it came about because Google had learned that Apple was actually going to pull away from using Google as their primary search within the Safari search box at the top. They were going to switch to Bing. And this would, obviously significantly reduce the amount of iOS engagement within the context of Google search results. So, and because Google was relying so heavily on the Safari search bar within iOS, they never really put that much effort into like making it a good experience. It kind of was like a web browser, and it had this problem. It was like really bloated. It had this problem with the tabs would open on tabs in different directions, and like you're just kind of like tapping all over the screen to like try and like get something done. It was like super confusing. It was like a pretty bad experience. And so one thing that Google really wanted to make sure iOS users were doing was they wanted them to keep searching with Google. And we really distilled the app down to one core feature, which was just searching. We didn't want it to be a browser. We didn't want it to like give you your Google apps. We didn't want it to launch any other Google apps. And a big behavior that a lot of people were doing through the Safari search functionality was that they were just doing these like single one-off searches. So like if you wanted to know how tall Barack Obama was, or if you wanted to like know what the population of India was, or if you wanted to like know what time Joe Beef closes, you could do it all with like one single button. And so we kind of came up with this idea, and we also wanted to emphasize like how good Google's voice input was. Oh, there's that problem. I'm going to go back to that. Is this playing? There we go. So we wanted to like emphasize how good Google's voice search was. So by pressing the voice search button, it would just take you right into a search immediately. If you wanted to do it with text entry, you just press the like text input, brings up the keyboard. But the really cool thing here is once you get your search results, no matter what they are and what format they come in, there's always this big blue button at the bottom, which essentially just brings you to a new search. So the idea was like it's this cyclical pattern of like, I want to know, I want photos of Coney Island, and then I just want to do another search right away. So like this is like a big behavior on Google that we really wanted to tap into because no other products at Google were just like focusing on like this behavior of a single one-off search. And then by pushing that button in the top right corner, it organizes all your searches into these what we were calling search sessions. So like every search you do, by pressing that blue button, it creates like a new tab. And so you can by doing searches for these single one-off searches, you're kind of creating like cue cards of things you might want to access again later. And we also really consider the problem of like, if I'm doing a lot of these, it's going to create a huge stack of them. So we used machine learning and a bit of AI to actually figure out which ones you're probably going to want to come back to and which ones you're not going to want to come back to again. So if it's like a time-related thing, it just goes away after you have discarded that tab. So it has like a really, really smart search or tab management system in it, but it's also just really, really reduced and distilled down to this one idea of doing single searches. And that's it. Just like super simple. And after it went live, Apple actually got so afraid that this was going to pull users away from Safari, even after they switched to Bing, that they ended up keeping Google as their primary search in Safari. So that was like a kind of a big success for us. So in that context, we're empowering users by delivering what they need and when they need it. And the friction that we're reducing is just like literally like taking out the friction of doing anything other than the one function that we want them to do. So before sneakers landed in my lap, we were finessing and reducing kind of like the labor of or friction of checking out at Nike.com. And so when you're checking out, we're looking at it within mobile here, but you start by adding items to your cart, and it automatically knows your shoe size right down there at the bottom. So that's already like one tap less that I have to bother when I'm checking out. And similar to Amazon, when you add stuff to your cart, it just gives you recommended items afterwards that you can add to your cart. And after you've added a few items, your cart is presented, we call it your bag, your shopping bag, but your cart is presented as just like this single screen, whereas this used to be like 10 or 11 different steps. So you like have to enter your shipping info, then you'd have to press next, then you'd have to enter your payment info, then you have to press next. So by actually getting the users to fill this out when they create an account, and because a lot of this is on mobile and you have to create an account, we already know all that information, so we're really stripping out the friction of getting you to enter all this laborious information. So all you have to do is press buy at the bottom of your bag and then press confirm, and you've literally checked out. It's pretty similar to like Amazon's one-click checkout. And the amount of users that are falling off is like significantly reduced because every opportunity, or every time you're getting a user to make a decision, like pressing a next button, is another opportunity for them to just like hesitate on their decision. And that's it. It knows like your info, and then you've checked out with a few taps. And so it's a beneficial experience to our users because it's like way easier for them to get what they want, but it's also beneficial to us because we are finding significantly more success on people that are checking out on Nike.com for mobile. And then after you've placed your order, we're also trying to delight you with these kind of like fun details, like we know that your stuff's arriving in time for you to actually sign up for one of these community runs at one of our stores. So it's like rewarding you. It's just actually rewarding you. But summarized, we're empowering users here by reducing the clicks, and we're just kind of like stripping out the friction of all of the checkout process. So that being said, now that I'm the design director on sneakers, what is it that I do? Well, I make it harder for people to use our app. And this kind of sounds like a joke, and it's obviously the title of my presentation. And it's counterintuitive to what most product designers do and are trying to do. But I'm going to set the stage now for what our app does and how it works. And hopefully by the end, you guys will understand the importance of how we use friction on the sneakers team to make our app a better experience. So just before we talk about the app, we kind of have to know the demographic, and you kind of got to set the stage for like who uses our app and like kind of the challenges that they face. So our app is designed for people who we casually refer to as sneakerheads. Just gonna play you a little clip here. So I'm not going to play this little clip for you because I don't have enough time. But the term sneakerhead and hypebeast used to be kind of like derogatory terms that referred to people who were perceived as either hyper-materialistic or they just had too many shoes. But now our community is really like taking those terms back, or the sneaker community has taken them back, and people are now using them as labels to actually describe themselves. And people are really proud of the collections that they have. This is a term that's very frequently used online, one to rock and one to stock. And that's the person who buys two pairs, one that they can wear on the streets and then one that they can keep in their collection. And this idea of like a sneaker collection is like a fundamental part of this culture. And that's because there are literally inherent values to every sneaker based on its rarity and its accessibility. And now we're at a point where there's actually startups. These are two very popular startups, StockX and Goat. And we're at a point where these startups are now capitalizing on the speculated values of any given shoe. By knowing how many are out there and by analyzing the going price, it's actually possible to turn pretty significant profits by buying a shoe at retail price and then reselling it for when the index is higher. This diagram illustrates the total dollars spent aftermarket on a number of very popular shoes. The Yeezy version 2 Beluga has generated $2.5 million in aftermarket sales, and none of that money goes to Adidas. That money is all money that was spent as inflated costs because people are flipping them for way more than they bought them for. So this is like why people are lining up for shoes now, and a lot of these people in line are people that want to wear them, and then some of these people are speculators that want to resell them. And they want to capitalize them by buying them at retail and then flipping them for a higher cost. Some people are actually camping overnight for them because they know that if they want to get a pair and a store has limited sizes, they're going to need to be like the first in line. And they're putting in like a lot of effort to be the first in line. And now because we live in the digital age where retailers and manufacturers are all selling online, where standing in this line would have granted you access to buying one pair, because most stores only limit you to one purchase. We now live in an age where you can buy several or even hundreds of pairs online and resell them at much higher costs through your own Shopify storefront or eBay page. This is actually a notorious online seller named Alan Coe. He has his own Shopify storefront. He's actually become so notorious to the point of being like a villain online within the community. And he buys them all at retail and then sells them for about four or five times the amount that he paid for them. So like some of these shoes cost around $180, and he's selling them for about $600 or $700 each. So he's made a lot of money doing this. And you're probably asking, like, how is somebody using technology to buy that many sneakers in bulk? Well, it's this thing that we call bots. People are now using sophisticated computer programs and scripts that will add the shoe to your cart and check out basically within seconds. And you can do this like across like as many websites as you want, faster than any person can do manually. And these programs are more commonly referred to as bots. You can like Google like sneaker bots, and there's like tons of like computation science students that are just like making tons of money building scripts for other people that buy sneakers. So this was like the kind of like the state of the market like 2 years ago, before sneakers kind of came to be this project at Nike. And prior to sneakers, we used to launch all of our shoes, like all of our new shoes were launched at Nike.com. And Nike.com could only handle about 70 transactions per second. Anything more than that, and it was dead. Like it would just crash. And it was like a pretty shitty experience for a lot of people. But it's also a shitty experience for us because people are trying to give us their money and we're not able to take it. We basically did this huge engineering push to generate this new cloud platform. And Nike.com is such a big website, it would have actually taken about 3 years to migrate all of Nike.com to the new cloud platform. So we started in like kind of an iterative startup-y kind of way. We were like, what if we just made a new product on the cloud platform? It's kind of like a guinea pig product to test this new cloud platform, and we called it Sneakers. And what Sneakers is basically a gateway to buying only our very, very premium shoes that we know are going to sell out immediately. Our new cloud platform is actually capable of doing up to 20,000 transactions per second, so there's no way it's going to crash from the traffic. And the security is so good on it because it's strictly mobile. We tie into iOS and Android security services, so you can't use bots on it either. So we really did everything in our control to make sure everyone had a fair chance of getting the shoes that they wanted. And for very, very coveted launches, we do this thing called a draw. We didn't want it to be who could press the button in the app as fast as possible, because that's not a very good way to earn your purchase. So we give everyone an hour to enter the draw, and we do a random selection based on everyone that entered within that hour. So we basically had democratized the launch market at Nike, and now everyone and anyone basically had a fair chance of getting the shoes that they wanted. But it was too fair. People who have huge collections, people that are invested in our culture, people that read the subreddits, people that used to get in line at stores, these people are all rolling the dice against people who weren't so invested in the culture, or even people that just want to resell the sneakers. So if you think about this in terms of product capacity versus happy users, let's say we only get 500 units of this very, very popular shoe. This is the first Air Jordan 1. We re-release it in a new format every 4 years. It basically sells out within seconds. On sneakers, we might only get 500 units, very small. And our app has 500,000 active monthly users that engage with our app on a regular basis. So let's say we put up those shoes and they sell out. We're basically pissing off about 95% of our active users. That's 499,500 people that are not getting the shoes. And because it's such a popular shoe, chances are they have this app, and they probably want these shoes. So that's a really bad look. And if you think about it in terms of this, imagine letting 500 people line up for a product and they all really want it, and then instead of giving it to the first 5 people in the line, you're just picking 5 random people out of the whole line the next day, and you're just giving it to them. Think about all the people at the front of the line who got there early, the people that camped out. You're just basically spitting in their faces. So you're probably asking yourself, why do we care if we're still selling all our shoes and they're selling them really fast? We're still, we're not poised to make more money immediately by selling shoes in a different way. But because this is product design, because this is we want to have a healthy digital product, we want people to engage with our app. And when they have an experience where 95% of our users are unhappy and they're talking about it online, they're just going to eventually lose interest, and they're going to think that our app isn't working for them. So we spent the past year really kind of pivoting our strategy, and we've come up with an idea that rewards the most culturally invested, and that's what I call designing with friction. It means people have to work hard, they have to jump through hoops, and they have to prove that they deserve to buy the product that they want. And when they do, successfully, they actually feel empowered by that, and they feel proud to the point where they want to share it, and they want to help other people get it too. And as a product designer, it's a really difficult position to design from, because you're literally making it harder for people to buy your products. You're making the journey longer, you're making the journey harder, and you're starting to play favorites to the people that are more invested in your culture. But that's kind of the point. We don't want to be rewarding people at random odds. We want to be rewarding the people who are more culturally invested. So how do we do that? We have a 3-part strategy. This is going a little slower than I thought, so I'm just going to skip the strategy, and I'm just going to go right into the actual work. So one of the things that we've done over the past year, this is the first feature we worked on. It was a really quick and easy one to implement. was to hide access to buying shoes within the story content rather than the e-commerce content. So we have a story template, and we were also releasing this, like, this shoe is poised to be very, very high heat. We call it high heat. Every shoe has like a heat level. If it's high heat, it means it's gonna sell out immediately. This shoe is very high heat. The story behind this shoe, there's a good backstory. It was Penny Hardaway's first shoe when he was signed to Nike. And it was kind of like supposed to be his signature shoe, and he wore them to game 1 of the playoffs. And he got fined about $5,000 for wearing them because they didn't meet the uniform code of the Orlando Magic. They said that the shoes had to be primarily black with blue trim, and they were primarily blue with black trim. So when returning to game 2, he had himself taken a Sharpie and colored in the negative space on the shoe so that it was primarily black, and he wasn't fined. And so this became obviously like a very iconic milestone for both Nike and this shoe franchise, the Foamposite. And so when it came time to re-release it, we used one of our storytelling platforms. We didn't say it was for sale anywhere. We were just telling them the same story that I essentially told you. But if you kind of like started swiping through the image carousel, you'd realize that it would lock in place and you could color in the negative space yourself. And if you colored it in fully, you get a secret message from Penny Hardaway himself.
Hanging out here at the distribution center, checking out the anniversary edition of my Air Foamposite 1. I couldn't lace up my pair on court without a little pregame customization, but you can secure yours before anyone else. Look out for a push notification.
I'm just gonna skip this video. But if you did end up unlocking them this way, it was only 200 pairs, and you got a little custom cool sneakers Sharpie, and you got this little exclusive collector's card that was signed by Penny, and he numbered them all individually. And it really elevated the experience of buying this shoe, and we were rewarding users for actively engaging with our storytelling content rather than just trying to buy the shoe as fast as possible. So that was our first feature, and then we kind of moved into this other one called Sneaker Stash, and it was about enabling communities at physical locations, getting people out of their homes into specific hidden locations if they knew where they were, so that they could earn access to being the first on scene. So the first Sneaker Stash we did was in LA, and it was for this collaboration with Don C. He was like a super high-level influencer. He grew up with Kanye West, and he designed this shoe for Mother's Day. And despite it being a women's shoe, we knew that it was going to sell out really, really fast. So it was another great opportunity for us to try this new feature. So what we did was we created a number of flower carts on Mother's Day. There was a flower stand here, and then there was 2 other ones all over downtown LA. And you could go to these locations and you couldn't buy them. So like you needed to have our app, but if you had the app, you could check in the app. It would know when you were at one of these locations using geolocation, and it would give you access to buy them in the app. So here's a little recap.
Nobody pray for me. It been a day for me. Yeah. Watch my soul speak. You let the meds talk. Ay, if I kill it, it won't be the alcohol. Ay, I'm the realest, after all. Tell them be humble. Sit down. Be humble.
I parked illegally. I don't give a shit. Ticket or no ticket. I got just done.
Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble.
It's been a wild ride, man. All about these just done shit. I came all the way from the Inland Empire.
Be humble. Sit down. Be humble.
The way Nike was putting this out there, it's pretty innovative looking.
I'm just going to skip this too because we're running a little over. Here's just some other activations we did through Sneaker Stash. So you could really use this all over where sneakers is available. And you could thematically kind of curate them to doing all these really cool things. Our third one's a little bit more complicated, but the payoff is really cool. We did this one recently, and we had a shoe coming out with David Chang. He had designed, I don't know if you guys know who David Chang is. He's a pretty well-known chef, especially in New York. He has a chain of restaurants called Momofuku, and he had designed this shoe in collaboration with Nike SB, and it uses the same denim that he uses on his aprons within all his kitchens. So this was kind of like a nod to his kitchen staff, and he really wanted to give these shoes to everyone in his kitchen. But the concept that we came to the table with on the sneakers team was we wanted to really bury the menu bury the shoes within the menu so that if you were at the restaurant, you could use the sneakers app, look at the menu with our sneakers cam, and then you could actually unlock the shoes by looking at the menu. And so it kind of gives you all these little hints, but you open the camera, and once it sees the menu, you can kind of manipulate the shoe in 3D space. And this is like a really fun way to actually reveal the shoe too, because everyone has like kind of made these Photoshop mock-ups online. People are guessing what the shoe is going to look like. But this is like a really great way for people to kind of like, this is the first time they're seeing it, and this is the first time they're like analyzing it, and they can kind of take screenshots. And then it would also give them the opportunity to buy it right then and there. And the beauty of this idea was that David Chang also shared the menu on his Instagram, so he had essentially opened it up to anyone that follows him, and as an influencer, he's now gifting access to the shoe. Our more clever users figured out that they could actually just use 2 devices and unlock the shoe using a second phone. We also seeded the idea to sneaker blogs. You could do the same thing with the image that they posted. And then we did like an out-of-home campaign that was pretty abstract in nature, but people kind of figured it out, and they could unlock the shoes from wherever they saw one of these out-of-home stickers or billboards. But it was still like within the control of sneakers because we were allowing the purchase to happen within the context of our platform. Here's just another little recap. Too. So storytelling is really like our best way of exchanging cultural value with our users. And gatekeeping to our most invested users and making them feel proud when they buy our products, we're finding is one of the best ways to keep engagement up within the context of a digital product. Our users just like keep coming back for more. So these are some of the ways that we're turning up the friction on the sneakers team in an attempt to make kind of like a backwards attempt at making a very good digital product. And to close it out, I'm just going to play another quick little recap video of all our features.
Nobody pray for me. It been a day for me. Yeah. Hey, I remember syrup sandwiches and crime allowances, finessing on them with some counterfeits, but now I'm counting this. AM to the PM.
Penny here. Look out for a push notification for an exclusive chance to cop my Airphone Closet 1.
Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble.
I got just done.
Be humble. Sit down. Who that thinking that he frontin' on that man? Get the off my stage. I'm the same man. Get the off my that ain't right. I ain't make a play blowing up your whole life. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down.
So that's it.